Here we go. On Friday, the Supreme Court ruled in a unanimous decision that TikTok must sever its ties with the Chinese government or be shut down tomorrow. The court sided with the government, rejecting TikTok's argument that the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversary-Controlled Applications Act violates that corporation's First Amendment rights. President Biden signed that ban into law in April of 2024. As I said on the last show, the bill grants the president power to issue a 90-day grace period before TikTok is officially banned. Donald Trump filed an amicus brief this week, siding with TikTok, urging the Supreme Court to issue a stay on the ban to allow Trump, after he becomes president, to use that 90-day grace period to broker a deal that takes into account national security concerns while at the same time keeping TikTok operational in America. The CEO of TikTok, Shou Chew, has been invited to Trump's inauguration on Monday and said he is planning to attend. Shou Chew, the CEO of TikTok, is not Chinese. He is a Singaporean citizen. TikTok is owned, however, by ByteDance, which is a Chinese corporation legally headquartered in the Cayman Islands. After Friday's court ruling, TikTok, used by 170 million Americans, including Donald Trump and Joe Biden, announced it would go dark tomorrow unless President Joe Biden invoked that 90-day grace period. But the Biden administration has repeatedly said this is out of their hands and that they are leaving the decision to Donald Trump after he becomes president on Monday. The Biden administration said they would allow Apple and Google to temporarily host TikTok until matters can be worked out with the new administration. But TikTok says that's not good enough. They are planning to shut down tomorrow. President Biden and Donald Trump, during his first administration, both presidents called TikTok a national security risk that allows China to spy on American users. In December of 2022, President Biden signed an executive order prohibiting federal employees from downloading the app on government-issued cell phones. Right now, there is talk that Elon Musk or Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank might be putting together a deal to purchase TikTok from its parent company, ByteDance. When the ban was passed last year, it was generally assumed TikTok wouldn't go dark here in the United States, and instead it would just be impossible to download the app as well as its updates, thereby making it useless as people buy new phones or update their old ones. The idea was that TikTok would slowly degrade here in the United States, but not go completely dark like it did in India, when India outlawed TikTok in 2020, and the entire site immediately was unavailable in that country. TikTok, it appears, is planning to do the same here in the United States. The app will be completely shut down, they say, Sunday. An estimated 2 million American content creators earn a combined $300 million a month creating videos for TikTok. I've said that I think TikTok will stay operational, that Donald Trump on Monday will give it a reprieve. Whether or not it goes dark tomorrow is anybody's guess, but I don't think TikTok is going anywhere. May have a new owner in 90 days, but I don't think we're going to lose TikTok. Rudy Giuliani failed to show up for his contempt of court hearing on Thursday, so he should have been arrested. He wasn't, and I think Donald Trump finally bailed him out. I think Donald Trump finally gave Rudy some money. Later On Thursday, it was revealed that Rudy settled tentatively with the two Georgia election workers he owes $150 million to after claiming they stuffed ballots for Joe Biden in the 2020 presidential election. He lost that defamation suit. Remember, this is tentative, and most of the information right now is coming primarily from Rudy Giuliani's camp. According to Rudy, he gets to keep his New York City and Palm Beach, Florida apartments. Now, he had already turned over the keys, but not the deed to his New York City apartment. Before the settlement was reached, the courts were still deciding whether he'd be ordered to surrender his Florida apartment. According to Rudy and Rudy's lawyers, Rudy's idiot son Andrew gets to keep those World Series rings that Rudy insisted were no longer part of his estate after gifting them to Andrew years ago. Giuliani saying the agreement is not an admission of guilt, but said he will never speak of these two women again. We'll see. Rudy has been found in contempt. He was found in contempt on Friday for repeating the very same lies that triggered the $150 million judgment. As recently as November, he was saying these women were stuffing ballots for Joe Biden. Giuliani's attorney saying this tentative agreement is private. That means we won't know the terms. We do know, so far, according to Rudy, that he's not turning over his material possessions to the mother and daughter election workers who corroborated Rudy's story yesterday, saying they have agreed to settle. They've agreed to monetary compensation instead of taking Rudy's worldly possessions. Well, where's that money coming from? We understand already in the possession of these two election workers, they have Rudy's 1980 Mercedes, which was once owned by Lauren Bacall, as well as his collection of watches. We don't know if they will be returning them. While Rudy gave them the key to that Mercedes, he never handed over the title. So we may never find out what he's paying them or where the money is coming from to pay them. Remember, he just got out of bankruptcy court. He's broke. Rumors are circulating that Donald Trump, who still owes Rudy roughly $3 million for the legal work Rudy did, losing 60 cases trying to prove voter fraud in the lead up to January 6th. Word is that Trump finally paid that bill, and the money from that bill will be handed over to the election workers. They will get roughly $2-3 million. I believe it's tax-free when it's a settlement, and that will be the end of it. That is what is being rumored. I suspect it's true. We won't know for a fact where that money comes from, but it does make sense. Again, a jury awarded these two women nearly $150 million, agreeing that Rudy's repeated racist and malicious lies forced them to go into hiding and upended their lives. Countless death threats because of Rudy Giuliani. Rudy ended last week having been found in contempt of court twice. Quite frankly, he should have been imprisoned. He made a total hash of the proceedings, refusing to cooperate while hiding assets from the court. Had this been anyone else, he would have been locked up. Well, a lot has happened in 4 years. It's worth keeping this in mind as the Trump administration begins yet again. A lot can happen in 4 years. A lot can happen in 2 years. Since January 6, 2021, Rudy Giuliani has been disbarred from both the New York City and Washington, D.C. bar. He cannot practice law anymore. He can no longer earn a living as a lawyer because he refused to stop repeating lies about the stolen election. Last year, he lost his only other real source of income. That was hosting a radio talk show on New York's WABC. They fired him. And his legal troubles are far from over. Okay? Noel Dunphy, a former personal assistant to Giuliani, is in the process of suing him for wage theft and rape. Her suit alleges Rudy forced her to pleasure him while he talked on the phone with Donald Trump. She said he told her that made him feel like Bill Clinton when she did that. That suit began in October of last year and is still in its preliminary stages. He tried to get it thrown out. He couldn't. Rudy, along with Trump, is also being sued in civil court for damages. He's being sued by Capitol police officers and several Democratic members of Congress for inciting the January 6th insurrection. That trial is proceeding. Rudy was indicted last spring and served papers on his 80th birthday after the Arizona Attorney General indicted him for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy in that state's false elector scheme. That trial is ongoing, as is the Fulton County, Georgia RICO trial, which has been placed on temporary hold as the district attorney in that case, Fani Willis, challenges a court ruling that transferred the trial out of her jurisdiction. You're looking right now at Rudy's Fulton County, Georgia mugshot that was taken back in 2023. And this is the Fulton County, Georgia mugshot taken on Thursday. It's of 33-year-old Georgia State Senator Colton Moore. We've talked about him. He's an extreme right-wing Republican firebrand who represents the rural parts of northwest Georgia. Colton Moore is a big supporter of Donald Trump and, of course, concealed carry laws. He's introduced legislation to impeach the Fulton County DA, Fani Willis, because of her ongoing RICO trial charging Trump with running a criminal enterprise in his attempt to overturn the 2020 election. Colton Moore, Senator Colton Moore, State Senator Colton Moore, appeared on Steve Bannon's podcast back in August of 2023. We played this clip. Colton Moore, State Senator Colton Moore, said, "I don't want a civil war, but if DA Fani Willis moves forward with her prosecution, people will have no choice but to take up arms against our government." And he implied he would be one of those people taking arms up against our government. Because of derogatory comments State Senator Colton Moore made during a ceremony honoring the recently deceased former Georgia House Speaker David Ralston, Senator Colton Moore called David Ralston corrupt in front of his grieving family. State Senator Colton Moore was permanently banned from entering the Georgia House chamber. Now, he's a state senator, which means he could still enter the Senate chamber, but not the House chamber. Permanently banned from the House chamber. On Thursday, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp was delivering his annual State of the State. That's inside the House chamber. Senator Colton Moore insisted on being allowed in. He elbowed his way towards the door, pushed some Capitol police officers who threw him to the ground, and then arrested him, charged State Senator Colton Moore with obstruction of law enforcement. He did not, however, spend the night in jail. We will be keeping an eye on this unhinged Republican from Georgia. We are just 2 more days away from Donald Trump resoiling the Oval Office. With meteorologists predicting the coldest weather in 40 years, Trump agreed to hold the ceremony inside the Capitol. Trump said the choice to move it inside was his, adding, quote, "I don't want to see people hurt or injured in any way. Unless, of course, they certify the election for Joe Biden. Then have at it. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who impeached Donald Trump twice, will be a no-show for Trump's inauguration. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, who didn't appear at Jimmy Carter's funeral, will not be appearing at Trump's inauguration. I think, however, she would show up for his funeral. We hope that's decades away. Donald Trump has named Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, and Jon Voight as his ambassadors to Hollywood, as well as 1986. Congratulations. These Sylvester Stallone, Mel Gibson, and Jon Voight are going to be Trump's Hollywood point men, and they're going to serve as international ambassadors to bring business to Hollywood. They can't even bring business to themselves. Donald Trump's first inauguration dimmed by the dearth of show business luminaries who were willing to perform. But this time, the stars will shine brightly. For example, the Village People have agreed to sing their 70s anthem, YMCA, at the inaugural ball. In a recent interview, the Village People's lead singer who co-wrote YMCA, Victor Willis, insisted that his song YMCA is not gay. Although last year, it did go in on a Fire Island summer rental with the song Small Town Boy by Bronski Beat. Nevertheless, Victor Willis insists the song YMCA isn't gay. I don't know why it shared a Fire Island summer rental with Small Town Boy by Bronski Beat. Seems kind of gay to me, but hey, none of my business, right? YMCA appeared on the group's third album entitled Cruising. Cruising, not a gay album. They chose the title Cruising because it was a concept album celebrating the bracing sting of salty sea air and occasional visits to exotic ports of call. It's all about cruising, going on cruises. Why would anybody think the Village People is gay? Victor Willis, the lead singer who wrote YMCA, also insisted that despite what everybody believes, he's perfectly straight and not a homosexual. Well, I, for one, never thought he was gay, but I did believe, and I still do, that he's a real cop. I mean, if I find out that Victor Willis is not a real cop, my worldview will be shattered. I mean, look, that has to be a cop with that scarf. What cop doesn't wear a scarf like that around his neck? Is that a lilac-scented scarf? Well, it's not just the Village People reuniting for Trump's inauguration. Donald Trump is reunited. Kool and the Gang is getting together for the inaugural. I don't think those are the original members, however. I don't know who those people are. But I don't think those are the original members of Kool and the Gang, but they will be performing at Trump's inauguration, as is Earth, Wind, and Fire. They're going to be laying down their soulful sound, although, again, not sure these are the original members. And an ABBA tribute band featuring Joe Manchin, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Wayne LaPierre, Prince Andrew, and the Pope. They will be rocking it out for the Trump inauguration. Okay, so in all honesty, Carrie Underwood will be performing. Not a fan, but to her credit, she is a vegetarian and an outspoken critic of animal cruelty, and yet she's a Republican. Go figure. Jason Aldean will be performing. In 2023, Jason had issued a public statement that his song, Try That in a Small Town, is not a pro-lynching song. I guess that's why he's performing at Trump's inauguration. If somebody has to go make a public statement that their song isn't an endorsement of lynching, you get invited to perform at the Trump inauguration. Kid Rock will also be performing. You might remember in June of 2023, Kid told Howard Stern he uses the N-word all the time, adding, "Why not?" In May of last year, Kid Rock gave an interview with Rolling Stone magazine journalist David Peisner, where Kid reportedly waved a gun around and continually used the N-word. So, of course, he'll be performing at the Trump inauguration. Billy Ray Cyrus will be performing. Good guy. He attacked the Country Music Awards for ignoring Beyonce's country album, Cowboy Carter. And he collaborated with Lil Nas X on the remix of Old Town Road. I'm not sure, but I think Lil Nas X is black and gay. We like Billy Ray Cyrus. And who doesn't love Lee Greenwood? Me. He will be performing his hit song, "I'm Proud to Be an American." Yes, he's proud to be an American because if you're Lee Greenwood, what else do you have to be proud about? Born in 1942, this patriot was of draft age during the Vietnam War, but he got a hardship deferment. When asked if he dodged the draft, Greenwood told Snopes 4 years ago, quote, "It angers me when I hear this. I never served in the military because I had children at the age of 17. I was given the classification 3A. The draft never got to that number. But if it had, like my father, I would have left my wife and children to fight and die if necessary for my country." Well, he ended up leaving his wife and children just not to die for his country. I think he's 2 or 3 marriages since, but he's proud to be an American, and freedom isn't free. At least it is for him because he had small children, but I know he supported that war, as did, a lot of people who somehow didn't have to serve over there. Joe Biden delivered his farewell address on Wednesday from the Oval Office. Despite being the most progressive president since FDR, that's according to Bernie Sanders, Biden's approval ratings, the lowest for any outgoing president since Jimmy Carter left office in 1981. The hostages, he couldn't release the hostages. Jimmy Carter, the most unpopular outgoing president, and Biden is hitting those numbers at 36.1%. This is the lowest approval rating during Biden's presidency. 64% of Americans disapprove of the job Joe Biden is doing right now. It's beyond, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. He's the best president of my lifetime, the most consequential, got more done, helped more people than any president since FDR. Well, so I sat and looked into this. Like, how could he be this unpopular? I'm not defending his unpopularity, obviously, but here's a key number. 18%. The median rental price for an apartment or house in America is 18% higher today than when Joe Biden first took office. Does that explain something? Under Trump, median rental prices rose 6.9%. Okay? So they went up 18% during the 4 years Biden was president. They went up 6.9% under Trump. So under Biden, there's no question housing got way more expensive. Under Trump, the cost of food rose a total of 11.4%. Total. Food was 11.4% more expensive when Trump left office. Under Biden, 22.9%, 23% basically, more than double what the number that Trump had. As for healthcare costs, and it's tricky measuring this, because Biden increased subsidies for health insurance, it's hard to measure the cost of healthcare going up because 80% of Americans right now can get Obamacare for as little as $10 a month, which sounds great until you need to use it. Plus, these are subsidies that go directly to the insurance companies. So Biden brought down the cost of health insurance for consumers. But when the government brings down the cost of health insurance for consumers, it's not lowering profits for health insurance companies. That means these subsidies come out of your pocket when you pay your taxes. So you're paying $10 a month for some crappy Obamacare. $10 a month is cheap. It's cheap because you end up paying for it when you pay your taxes. The government is subsidizing. The health insurance companies are still making record profits. Like everything when it comes to healthcare in America, this is purposely complicated. So the best way to measure how expensive health insurance, not health care, health insurance, the best way to measure how expensive health insurance has gotten for Americans is by measuring the size of insurance companies versus the rest of our economy. Okay? Because of these subsidies, health insurance companies scored record profits during the Biden administration. Because if the cost of health insurance is going down for you and me, well, then that would theoretically mean that the health insurance sector would be making up a smaller percentage of our overall economy. And if it's going up, if health insurance costs are going up, then it would make up a larger percentage of our GDP or our economy. So under Biden, health insurance, not health care, health insurance comprised 8.4% of our entire economy as of this morning. When Joe Biden took office, health insurance was 8%. Health insurance, not car insurance, auto insurance, fire insurance, house insurance, health insurance, which is totally unnecessary, which kills hundreds of thousands of people. Health insurance is 8% of our entire economy as of today. 8.4% of our entire economy goes to health insurance companies who do what? When Trump took office, health insurance comprised 6.6% of our entire economy. So clearly the cost of health insurance increased under Joe Biden. It was either more expensive for consumers or for taxpayers who paid for these health insurance subsidies. But the profits for the health insurance companies continue to climb under Joe Biden. Health care spending, okay? There's a difference between health care and health insurance. And when Democrats say we want to bring down the cost of health care, they should be saying we want to bring down the cost of health insurance by getting rid of it, by making it free. Health care spending, what is that? That's health insurance plus hospitals, doctors, dentists, pharmaceuticals. That entire suite of services is health care spending That makes up 20% of our entire economy. 1/5 of our entire economy is spent on health care. 8.4% of our entire economy is spent on health insurance. So, when someone like me argues and says we need Medicare for all, we need to put the health insurance companies out of business, and some Republican shill for the health insurance companies say, well, hold on, put the health insurance companies out of business. You want to eliminate 1/5 of our entire economy? No, I want to eliminate 8.4% of our economy. And that money will not be eliminated, but it will be spent on better health care. That money will go towards hospitals and doctors and more nurses and more, free nursing homes. You're not eliminating 8.4% of the economy. You're, what's the term called? Redistributing the wealth, which I know Republicans, they don't like the term redistributing wealth unless it's being redistributed upwards, the way it's been for the past 40 years. Redistribution of wealth is perfectly okay when 5 families control 80% of the wealth in this country. That redistribution, that's American. But if you want to spread it around a little, then you're a radical Marxist. So 20% of our economy is spent on health care, not insurance. Canada's health care spending is 12% of their entire economy. So you see how it works? We spend 20% of our entire economy on health care. Canada spends 12%. Why are we spending 8% more than Canada on health care with worse results? 8%. Health insurance. Health insurance skims 8% off the top of our healthcare spending. I'm not getting the math right. It's more than that. They skim 8% of our GDP. I mean, it's incredible. They get 8% of our total economy. Think about this. Health insurance companies get 8% of our entire economy. And what do they do other than murder their customers? So, Joe Biden's lousy poll numbers. He could have capped health insurance prices. You're going to see a flurry of emergency orders on Monday. Joe Biden could have issued some executive orders, declared a healthcare emergency, and ordered the health insurance companies to freeze their costs. Would have been taken up by the Supreme Court, of course, but anyway, back to Joe Biden's lousy poll numbers. The cumulative inflation rate under Joe Biden is roughly 20%, right? We're seeing the totality now of his 4 years. It's coming to an end. So things are 20% more expensive today than they were 4 years ago. Under Trump, things were 9% more expensive. So when Obama left office and Trump, between the time Obama left office and Trump left office, things became 9% more expensive. Under Biden, things became 20% more expensive. There is no question things got more expensive. Inflation shot up to 7.1% during Biden's first year in office. There are many reasons, okay? When you shut the economy down and then reopen it, things get expensive. Now, it's important that to remember that Joe Biden rewrote Economics 101. The 7.1% inflation we saw during his first year in office had nothing to do with fiscal spending. The Inflation Reduction Act was passed during his second year. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act was signed into law at the end of his first year. That money didn't get spent until late. They didn't even start spending it until late 2022. It's still being spent. Granted, there were two massive stimulus bills, but that was to keep people alive, right? When COVID first hit, there was a massive stimulus bill under Trump, and then I think it was the American Rescue Plan under Joe Biden when he first took office. That wasn't inflationary. That kept people from starving. As money from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, those billions, couple of trillion, are being pumped into the economy now, okay? As that money gets pumped into the economy, we see inflation coming down to 3.6% in 2023 and down to 2.9% in 2024, which is almost where you want it. You want inflation down to 2%. So all these big bills that Joe Manchin called inflationary were not inflationary. Joe Biden has rewritten the economic rule books. Fiscal spending does not cause inflation. What causes inflation is greed, supply chain issues, and concentration of wealth. When two companies are selling sodas, if you have a choice between Coke and Pepsi, or two companies, Albertsons and Kroger's, own all the supermarkets, the cost of food is going to go up, not fiscal spending. Not fiscal spending. So inflation, okay. Unemployment currently stands at 4.1%. When he took office, it was 6.3%. So Joe Biden added about 17 million jobs to our economy in 4 years. Trump lost 3.3 million jobs. But it was COVID, and a lot of voters, it was hard to say, I tried to convince a lot of voters, don't make excuses. Biden added 6.6 million jobs, close to 17 million jobs. Trump lost 3.3 million. You don't get to make excuses for that. Our gross domestic product, our economy, grew nearly 30% during the 4 years that Joe Biden was in office. What does that mean? It means this economy is 30% larger. Our GDP is 30% larger. Trump grew the economy by 4% over 4 years. Biden, it grew 30%, Trump 4%. When you take out COVID and just go with the first 3 years of each president, remember COVID began in March of 2020. So if you just look at the first 3 years of each presidency, Biden's first 3 years in office saw a combined growth of 10.3%. Trump, his first 3 years before it went to crap, the economy only grew 7.7%. So when you take COVID out of the picture, Biden's overall economy much stronger. Those are the raw numbers. We're finally getting a clear comparison between Trump's first 4 years and Biden's first 4 years. Those are the numbers. It's somewhat of a mixed bag. I mean, an argument, if you are racist, stupid, homophobic, greedy, you can make some numbers sing for Donald Trump. I showed you some numbers. It's not as clear as we were trying to push you on when Biden or Kamala Harris was running. It's not as, when the basic necessities of life, food, housing, and health care are more expensive under Biden than they are under Trump, which I just showed you they were. It's hard to make the case for some people. It's why she got, 5 million fewer votes than Joe Biden did? And it's why he got a couple million fewer votes than Joe Biden did. Nobody's happy with the way things are. And so, in his valedictory, Joe Biden, taking a page from Eisenhower, warned of America turning into an oligarchy and cautioned against the concentration of wealth. You might remember, before abandoning his reelection bid, Joe Biden was campaigning on not just allowing the Trump tax cuts for the rich to expire, he was promising to institute a wealth tax. He said the wealthy are going to be paying more taxes. That wealth tax, Kamala Harris, upon getting the nomination, quickly abandoned the wealth tax. According to Bloomberg, America's 100 richest got $1.5 trillion wealthier during the 4 years under Joe Biden. Much of that can be attributed to the stock market gaining 56% during the past 4 years. Here's something interesting. Perhaps one of the reasons people voted for Trump. I didn't know this. I did some research. Okay? Over a 4-year period, if you follow the stock market, you will have noticed that the stock market went up 56% under Joe Biden. And Democrats kept saying, look how great the stock market is doing. But under Trump, the stock market rose 68%. So people who were looking at their 401ks and their retirement were happier when Trump left office by, 12 points? 56? Yeah, 12 points. Trump had a 12% better return in the stock market. It goes against history. We're always told the stock market does better when Democrats are in office. Trump changed that dynamic. If you're part of the investor class, you definitely did better under Trump. And that includes the stock market crashing in 2020. Yes, we had the worst stock market crash, I think, since 1987, perhaps, almost as bad as the Great Depression. But by the end of 2020, the stock market bounced back up by almost 20% for the year. In other words, if you didn't sell and you held on in 2020, you would have made a 20% return in 2020 when COVID hit. So again, we always hear the stock market does better when a Democrat is in office. And that was true, but Trump and Biden have changed that dynamic. The stock market, despite COVID, did better under Trump than it did under Joe Biden. Again, the stock market hit record highs under Joe Biden. but it didn't do as well as it did under Trump. Annualized return in the stock market for Trump was 13.3%. In other words, you got 13, if you were invested in the stock market, you got 13.3% per year. You know how you buy like you put money in a savings account and it pays 3% a year? If you invested in the stock market under Trump, you would get 13.3% a year, right? That means you get $100, you put $100 into the market, and at the end of the year, you would have $113.30, okay? Each one of Trump's 4 years, including 2020 when the stock market crashed, stocks averaged a 13.3 annualized return. Biden's 12.2%. That's a lot of a difference. That 1.2% annualized, it's a big difference. And again, this goes against the historical grain of the stock market doing better under Democratic presidents. The stock market, compared to Biden, did better under Trump. Shocking. Wasn't like this until Biden became president, until Trump became president. For example, Obama, Democrat, just look at the first 4 years. We have some two-term presidents here, so we're just going to look at the first 4 years. Obama, his first 4 years, had a 17% annualized return. That's pretty great, right? Democrat. Republican George W. Bush's annualized return after his first 4 years, negative 3.2%. You lost money. If you had money in the stock market, you lost money after the first 4 years of George W. Bush's administration. Clinton, 15.7% annualized return his first 4 years in office. Okay, he got 15.7%. George Herbert Walker Bush, his predecessor, 11.8%. So Clinton, the Democrat, outperforms his predecessor, the Republican George Herbert Walker Bush. This was amazing. Reagan's first 4 years in office, the one who introduced stock market mania and deregulation and stock buybacks and everything is Wall Street. His first 4 years brought in an annual return of 5.3%. Not a lot. Not as bad as George W. Bush, but not great. Jimmy Carter, the most unpopular modern American president, they threw him out to put Reagan in, who gave us a 5.3 annualized return in the stock market. How did Jimmy Carter do? 8.7% annualized return in the stock market. So if you were in the stock market, when Carter was president, you did better than when Reagan was president. Granted, inflation was double digits. It was double digits for much of Reagan's first 4 years as well. So again, when you look at Democratic presidents vis-a-vis Republican presidents, Carter's stock market, Carter, Democrat, outperformed Reagan's. Clinton's stock market outperformed his predecessor, George Herbert Walker Bush, and it outperformed the cretin who came after Clinton, George W. Bush. Obama, Democrat, outperformed George W. Bush and Trump. So you are well within your right to have been claiming the stock market historically does better under Democrats. But Biden became the first Democratic president in modern American history to underperform his predecessor his Republican predecessor when it comes to the stock market. So Look, I'm beside myself. Monday is coming. I'm trying to figure out how this happened, and I'm curious as to what you think. This is our very first chance to compare the totality of the Biden administration versus the Trump administration. Again, I think Joe Biden is the best president of my lifetime. But in trying to understand the low polling numbers, historically low approval ratings for Joe Biden, in trying to understand Trump's victory, did any of these numbers help? Again, I'm not defending Trump. I'm telling you, we're going to miss Joe Biden, okay? But did any of these numbers help you understand what others may be thinking? Leave a comment. Donald Trump is indefensible. Leave a comment. To me, it's black and white. Trump is the worst. Not as bad as George W., but Trump is the worst. Biden, the best. Again, I'm just asking, going over these numbers, does it help you understand what others might be thinking? Not that they're right. And if you want to think a certain way, there are plenty of statistics to help you. I'm just trying to show you what I think the others saw or wanted to see. Let me know in the comments section if that was any help. This is the mop-up for January 18th, 2025. I got a lot to get to. Hey, it's going to be harder and harder for you to find this show. Things are happening. So, there's a change going on. And so if you enjoy this show, it may not be popping up in your feed. So you might want to hit the notification bell, or you might go, good, who needs this crap? But if you enjoy the show, and if you want to help me, please hit the like button. That way it will remain in your feed. If you hit the notifications bell, that helps you know when I'm doing a show. And I need to grow the audience. It's getting harder to be found because of why. So if you can copy and then paste the link to these shows and share them with like-minded people, it will keep this thing going, because you know what's happening. You know what's happening to the Washington Post. You know what's happening to Vox. You know what's happening to the big corporate media. Try to imagine what's happening, to the bottom feeders like me. The death toll rises to 27 in the Los Angeles fires. 16 died in the Altadena fire, 9 in the Pacific Palisades. Altadena is about 15 miles away from downtown Los Angeles. The Pacific Palisades is 20 miles away. Altadena's population is twice the size of the Pacific Palisades. On average, the homes in the Pacific Palisades are twice as expensive as Altadena. 31 people are reported missing in all of Los Angeles County because of the fires. 24 are missing from Altadena. That fire, 7 are missing because of the Pacific Palisades fire. The Altadena fire is reported to be 80% contained. The Pacific Palisades fire is 83% contained. The Pacific Palisades fire burnt acreage that is the equivalent of Manhattan. Imagine the city of Manhattan being burnt to the ground. I do that every day. I live here. Sometimes it would smell better. Because these areas are so densely populated and the real estate so expensive, it is now estimated the price tag for the fires will eventually come in at $250 billion. We have news coming out of the Middle East. As of this morning, this is changing. But as of this morning, by a vote of 13 to 12, Israel's cabinet approved a ceasefire with Hamas. That is expected. The ceasefire is to go into effect tomorrow. Some cabinet members voted against the agreement, fearing Hamas would only use the ceasefire to get more ammunition from the international community. The first phase of the ceasefire, according to the agreement, will last 6 weeks. During that 6-week period, according to the terms, fighting from both sides must come to a complete halt. Israeli soldiers must pull out of populated areas of Gaza. This suggests they will remain in Gaza but away from civilians. This first phase will also include the swapping of hostages held by Hamas in exchange for Palestinian prisoners held by Israel. According to the agreement, Israel would get 33 of the 100 hostages in the first 6 weeks. Of the 100 hostages, about 70 are expected to still be alive. Hundreds of Palestinians being held in Israel would be allowed back into Gaza, as would 600 humanitarian trucks each day. The New York Times reporting 200,000 tents and 60,000 temporary homes will be delivered to provide housing for the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians left with no place to live. The New York Times reporting this morning that since the announcement of the deal, Israel has killed at least 101 Palestinians in Gaza as fighting continues until tomorrow. The Palestinian Authority, that is the ruling body of Palestinians in the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority announced after the deal was made public that they are willing to assume the role of administrator of Gaza, despite the Palestinian Authority not being mentioned in the agreement. It might have been a deal killer for Hamas. Now, the Palestinian Authority, the PA as it's called, is run by Fatah. Fatah is a political party with ties to the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. This was Yasser Arafat's group. Hamas defeated Fatah in Gaza's legislative elections held in 2006. Remember, George Bush invaded Iraq to spread democracy throughout the Middle East? Well, they held legislative elections in Gaza, and Hamas, which Bush didn't like, defeated Fatah, so the United States said, we don't recognize Hamas's victory. We're spreading democracy throughout the Middle East unless the wrong people win. So Hamas won in 2006. The United States and Israel refused to recognize Hamas. A civil war broke out between Hamas and Fatah a year later, with 118 killed. This was a civil war between two Palestinian factions, Fatah, which has its roots with the PLO, and Hamas. 118 were killed. Fatah ended up losing the civil war, getting kicked out of Gaza, and Hamas assumed total control over Gaza. So Hamas has controlled Gaza for 19 years. In 2017, Hamas and Fatah signed the Cairo Agreement, where both sides agreed to begin talks to work out their differences. So what you have, if the peace holds, what you have hopefully are two political parties, instead of two warring parties, Hamas and Fatah. And they will then hopefully hold elections. In Israel, I hope I get this right, there was the Haganah and the Irgun. They were like Hamas and Fatah. The Haganah was David Ben-Gurion. They were the more moderate militants fighting for Israeli independence. And then the Irgun was kind of like Hamas, Menachem Begin. So once Israel was established as a state, Haganah and the Irgun put their weapons down and stopped fighting each other, and they became political parties, and they fight it out in the Knesset. Now, the parties have changed. There's no party called the Haganah or the Irgun, but the Labor Party has its roots in the Haganah, and I would say the Likud Party, what's left of it, Benjamin Netanyahu, it could probably trace its roots to the Irgun, the more militant wing of Israeli liberation. It's why Netanyahu is so afraid of Hamas. He sees himself in Hamas. Very complicated. Anyway, the nation of Qatar has been brokering talks between Hamas and Fatah. The only way this is going to work is if Hamas and Fatah can somehow become political parties as opposed to warriors. Qatar, along with Egypt, also brokered the New Deal between Hamas and Israel, which by the time I'm done here has probably fallen apart, unfortunately. But maybe the ceasefire will hold, because 47,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, 2023. Since that attack, 1,200 Israeli citizens have died. 840 soldiers have been killed in battle. 840 Israeli soldiers have been killed in battle. 90% of Palestinians living in Gaza have been forced to leave their homes. So this has been a horrible, it's just been, I have no words. Let's hope this ceasefire holds. How we doing? Okay. There are 2 days left until Donald Trump resoils the Oval Office. In an effort to bring the Republican caucus to Donald Trump's heel, Speaker Mike Johnson fired House Republican from Ohio, Michael R. Turner, as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. This was pretty incredible. Michael Turner, Republican congressman, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, fired by Mike Johnson on Friday. Turner earned the ire of Trump back in 2021 when Turner voted to certify the presidential election for Joe Biden. Turner has repeatedly called out the pro-Putin wing of the Republican Party, while at the same time he voted to fund Ukraine last year. Before Trump was indicted for mishandling classified material, Turner gave several interviews saying he had grave concerns about Trump's behavior with classified documents. He also recently indicated he would not vote in favor of Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence. Turner, this is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. Turner said he met with Gabbard, wasn't convinced. There are reports that Turner is so angry with Mike Johnson for removing him he will refuse to vote in favor of much, if not all, of Trump's agenda. Remember, there's a razor-thin majority in the House. Johnson, depending on who shows up, he can only afford to lose 2, maybe 3 Republicans tops. He just pissed off Mike Turner. Arkansas Republican Rick Crawford has been given the chairmanship of the Intelligence Committee. He will replace Turner. Crawford has voted against giving aid to Ukraine, but like Turner, he did vote to certify the election for Joe Biden in 2020. Trump got what he wanted from Mike Johnson, but he didn't get what he wanted from Republican Governor of Ohio, Mike DeWine. Trump was urging Governor DeWine to appoint Vivek Ramaswamy as senator to replace J.D. Vance, who is now going to be our vice president. Ohio Governor DeWine has shown independence from Trump. He's a Republican, but DeWine refused to attack the Haitian immigrants living in Springfield, Ohio, and he asked Trump and Vance to knock it off. DeWine also endorsed State Senator Matt Dolan in last year's Senate race instead of Trump's pick, Bernie Moreno. Moreno went on to win the primary and defeat Democrat Sherrod Brown in November. Well, Governor DeWine didn't pick Ramaswamy to be J.D. Vance's replacement in the Senate. Instead, he chose Lieutenant Governor John Husted. The Washington Post reports this morning that Vivek Ramaswamy, upon hearing that he won't be getting the Senate seat once occupied by J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy is now making plans to run for governor of Ohio in 2026, when the Republican DeWine will be term limited. That job will be opened, and it looks like Vivek Ramaswamy, after he solves government efficiency in Washington, D.C., will run for governor of Ohio. You know, one way to make our government efficient, Vivek, is go back to Ohio. Just get out of Washington. There are reports that Donald Trump is not getting Don Jr. to bend to his will when it comes to affairs of the heart. Don Jr. said, "You're not the boss of me, Dad." Well, actually, you are. But Don Jr. is defying his father. There are reports that Don Sr. doesn't approve of Don Jr.'s new girlfriend, Palm Beach socialite Bettina Anderson. And the soon-to-be president asked that Don Jr. not bring Bettina Anderson to the inauguration for fear the relationship will then look like it's been set in stone. He said, this is what we're hearing. He said, "Idiot," that's what he calls his son. "Idiot, do not bring Bettina because she'll be photographed and then everybody's going to think it's permanent." Some are saying Don Sr. doesn't approve of Bettina Anderson's reputation for dating wealthy men. Well, now she's dating Don Jr., so she's no longer dating wealthy men. He doesn't approve that she has a reputation for partying. Apparently she's a party animal. I don't believe that. Don Jr. surrounding himself with someone who likes to party? I've seen no evidence that Jr. engages in legal or illegal substances. Why would he be attracted to a party girl? And apparently Don Sr. doesn't approve of her social media history. It's apparently problematic because Bettina Anderson's social media includes posts where she supports Black Lives Matter and urges people to wear masks. She's an infidel. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis also refused to bend to Donald Trump's will. He refused to appoint Lara Trump, the idiot wife of idiot son Eric Trump, to become the next senator from Florida to replace Marco Rubio, who Trump has nominated to be Secretary of State. Instead, DeSantis is appointing Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody to fill Rubio's seat. In January of last year, Ashley Moody, as Florida's Attorney General, defended a local school board banning books like The Perks of Being a Wallflower. She defended book banning, arguing that book banning is government speech protected by the First Amendment. This is Pam Bondi was the Attorney General before her. This one is Ashley Moody, Florida's Attorney General, says the First Amendment protects the right of governments to ban books because banning books is protected speech. Remember there was a time when this would be considered shocking? I'll talk about Pam Bondi in a second. Marco Rubio, Donald Trump's pick for Secretary of State, testified before the Senate Foreign Affairs Committee for his confirmation hearings. They began on Wednesday. During those hearings, Rubio said he voted against aid for Ukraine last year because the bill didn't include funding for security along the southern border. He called the situation in Ukraine, quote, a war of attrition. Rubio testified that while Ukraine, remember, this is going to be our next Secretary of State, and he will be our Secretary of State. He's going to get confirmed. Rubio testified that while Ukraine must remain independent from Russia, Ukraine is also running out of Ukrainians to fight to defend their land. He said the Ukrainians will never accept Russian domination, but at the same time, Russians will never accept defeat. So, he said, it's the job of the United States to somehow find a way to end the killing. Rubio said half of Ukraine right now is occupied by Russia. Is that true? Leave a comment. Is half of Ukraine occupied by Russia? That's what Rubio said. He said both sides need to make concessions. Rubio testified he would entertain the idea of Ukraine agreeing not to join NATO if that would end the fighting. And he added that America could incentivize Russia to negotiate a peace deal by promising to remove economic sanctions against Russia. Rubio called the economic sanctions effective. Rubio called Greenland a strategic part of the United States defenses. He said it will be more strategic over the next 50 years as America competes with Russia for navigational control of the Arctic Circle as the Arctic Circle melts and opens up new pathways for ships. He also cited Greenland's rich minerals as a reason to develop a strategic alliance with Greenland. He didn't talk about seizing Greenland. Rubio warned that China had gained too much control over the Panama Canal, and there was potential for China to create a chokehold blocking American ships from passing through. Nonsense. Pam Bondi, Trump's pick for Attorney General, told the Senate Judiciary Committee during her confirmation hearings that 2/3 of Americans have no faith in our Justice Department. According to Business Insider, Pam Bondi owns nearly $4 million in Donald Trump's Truth Social stock. I'm sure that will help Americans regain their trust in the Justice Department. Bondi's net worth is reportedly $12 million. She hasn't been Florida's Attorney General for 8 years, It's amazing what you can earn when you're in between jobs in the government. You might recall, as Florida's Attorney General in 2013, Pam Bondi dropped an investigation into Donald Trump University after her campaign received a $25,000 donation from the Trump Family Charitable Foundation. By that time, by 2013, when she got the Trump donation from the Trump Family Charitable Foundation, Trump University had already been shut down, facing several lawsuits in states like Texas and New York, charging Trump University with defrauding students through deceptive marketing. Before taking office back in 2017, Trump agreed to settle the lawsuits against Trump University by paying $25 million to compensate former students. By the time he took office, Trump University had been shut down, as had the Trump Family Charitable Foundation. Letitia James, the New York State Attorney General, shut down the Trump Family Charitable Foundation. I believe that happened in 2019. Bondi left the Florida Attorney General's office in January of 2019. A year later, she was serving as Trump's attorney during his first impeachment trial. If confirmed, Bondi would be one of Trump's 4 personal lawyers who he has appointed to the Department of Justice. Todd Blanche has been nominated for Deputy Attorney General. And what a great attorney Todd Blanche is. Todd Blanche represented Trump in the New York City hush money case, which he lost. Trump was convicted on 34 felonies, thereby making Donald Trump the first American president ever to be a felon. Todd Blanche was not the lead attorney in the E. Jean Carroll trial, but he played a major role in mapping out the legal strategy, which is why Trump lost. Thanks to Todd Blanche, who Trump nominated for Deputy Attorney General, Trump was ordered to pay E. Jean Carroll $80 million for defamation and, let's call it, sexual abuse. Todd Blanche was also part of the legal team that represented Donald Trump in the New York State civil fraud trial that Trump lost last year and was ordered to pay a fine of nearly $500 million. So, how could you not appoint this legal wizard to work in the Justice Department? The man lost all 3 of Donald Trump's trials. Trump had no choice but to nominate him for Deputy Attorney General. Emil Bove, also one of Trump's attorneys, has been given a job over at the Justice Department. Emil Bove is a partner at Blanche Law. That would be Todd Blanche's law firm. So he helped Todd Blanche lose all 3 trials. The Manhattan hush money trial, where Donald Trump became a convicted felon. The E. Jean Carroll trial, where Trump was ordered to pay $80 million. And, of course, the civil fraud trial, all last year. He has to pay $500 million. He's appealing all 3, of course. 3 trials. Todd Blanche lost all 3. And the 2 lawyers representing Trump in those 3 trials are going to be working inside the Justice Department when the Senate confirms them. And let's not forget D. John Sauer, who Trump nominated for Solicitor General. D. John Sauer argued on behalf of Donald Trump before the Supreme Court last year in the presidential immunity case. During oral arguments, D. John Sauer said he believed ex-presidents are immune from prosecution for ordering SEAL Team 6 to kill his political opponent if the ex-president can prove it's an official act. This guy's going to be our Solicitor General, if confirmed. Back to Pam Bondi. Democrat Dick Durbin is the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee. Durbin asked Pam Bondi, could you ever say no to Trump? Well, E. Jean Carroll said no to Trump. A lot that helped. Both Durbin and Senator Mazie Hirono of Hawaii asked Bondi if Trump lost the election in 2020. After what can only be described as an awkward silence, all Pam Bondi could muster was Joe Biden is president. Could not bring herself to say mein Führer lost the 2020 presidential election. Dick Durbin asked Bondi for her reaction to Donald Trump's infamous call to Georgia's Secretary of State, where he asked him to find 11,780 votes. Bondi said, I read about it, but I'm unfamiliar with the call, and I cannot comment. Durbin asked, should the January 6ers be pardoned? Bondi said, I would have to look at the individual cases. When asked, what about the January 6ers who are now serving time for beating Capitol police officers? Should they be pardoned? Pam Bondi said, I would have to look at the individual cases. California's new Senator Adam Schiff, who sat on the January 6th committee when he was a congressman, Adam Schiff asked Bondi if she agreed with Donald Trump when he called the January 6ers now doing time, when he called them, quote unquote, patriots. Bondi responded, quote, I'm not familiar with that statement. So Senator Schiff said, quote, Donald Trump called the people serving time for attacking the Capitol patriots. I just familiarized you with the statement. Do you agree? Bondi answered, quote, I'm not familiar with that statement. Jesus. Schiff asked if she was willing to retract her false claims about Pennsylvania's election fraud in 2020. Senator Schiff pointed out that Bondi stood alongside Rudy Giuliani in Pennsylvania, making false claims that Joe Biden lost, even though 1 million votes in Pennsylvania remained to be counted. Schiff pointed out that Biden eventually won Pennsylvania by more than 80,000 votes. He asked Pam Bondi, would you now like to take those claims back? Bondi insisted she still had questions about how the election was conducted in Pennsylvania back in 2020. Schiff pointed out that after Rudy lost all his court hearings in Pennsylvania and that the Supreme Court refused to even take Texas's case challenging the results in Pennsylvania, Schiff pointed out that despite all that, Bondi then doubled down on claiming there was voter fraud in Pennsylvania. Bondi said, I have questions about how that election in Pennsylvania in 2020 was conducted. Senator Schiff said, it's now been 4 years. You say there's voter fraud. You say you have questions that there might have been voter fraud in Pennsylvania. Where is your proof? What are your questions? Pam Bondi didn't answer the question. Bondi testified that she has had no talks with Trump about prosecuting Adam Schiff or Liz Cheney for serving on the January 6th committee, even though throughout the campaign, Trump said the two should be arrested for treason. Senator Mazie Hirono asked Bondi, on Fox News, you said if Trump wins, the prosecutors will be prosecuted. Bondi refused to answer, calling the idea of prosecuting Special Counsel Jack Smith and Attorney General Merrick Garland, quote unquote, hypotheticals that I don't want to get into. Senator Durbin asked Bondi about her lobbying for the nation of Qatar, as well as lobbying for Amazon and Uber. He asked if that would compromise her decision to prosecute any of these entities. Well, you can guess her answer. Public Citizens co-president Lisa Gilbert warned on Thursday while testifying that Bondi has a conflict of interest since she lobbied for Geo Group, a private prisons company. Geo Group was the very first corporation to donate to Donald Trump in 2024 and will make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars if the Senate passes the Lake and Riley Act next week. By the way, Lisa Gilbert is co-president of Public Citizen. You should always donate to Public Citizen. They are the people's lobbyist. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat from Rhode Island, asked Pam Bondi, do you have an enemies list? Bondi said no. And she added Kash Patel, Trump's pick for FBI, who said he's keeping an enemies list. Pam Bondi said he doesn't have an enemies list. And then she said, so far you're not on it, Senator, but if you continue with this line of questioning, you're going to end up on that list that doesn't exist. She didn't say that. But she did volunteer that Kash Patel, who said he keeps an enemies list, doesn't have an enemies list. Bondi went on to defend Patel's record as a federal prosecutor and a federal public defender. She's going to be the Attorney General. Doug Burgum, Trump's pick for Secretary of Interior, testified during his confirmation hearings before the Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resources. Burgum ran for the Republican presidential nomination last year and served as governor of North Dakota until January of this year. Instead of climate change, he warned that America faces an energy crisis. We have an energy crisis. Burgum testified that global warming, while real, he says it's real, but I'm not making any commitments to alternative energy. To his credit, 36% of electricity in his state comes from wind. And there he is, I believe, releasing some. 36%. He testified that the federal government is $36 trillion in debt, but the Department of Interior, which he's going to head, owns $200 trillion in assets. That would be land. He said, let's use the $200 trillion in assets to pay off our debt. Jeez. He said, federal land is, quote, part of our balance sheet, and there's money to be made off of it. Former Congressman Lee Zeldin is Trump's pick for EPA. Zeldin testified during his confirmation hearings. He testified pretty much that I know nothing about the environment, but I'm willing to learn. Unfortunately, from the oil companies, knows nothing. But I'm willing to learn, he said. Open Secrets reports that as Congressman Lee Zeldin accepted nearly $300,000 in fossil fuel donations. He's going to head the EPA. Scott Bessent is Trump's pick for Treasury. His confirmation hearings took place before the Senate Finance Committee. Bessent testified he opposes Joe Biden's international agreement of a 15% minimum global tax. Biden struck that deal to prevent American corporations from moving operations overseas to hide money from the IRS, to keep companies like Microsoft and Apple from keeping assets overseas. Bernie Sanders asked Bessent if he supported raising the minimum wage, which has been stuck at $7.25 an hour since 2009. Bessent said raising minimum wage is better left to the states. Bessent said extending the Trump tax cuts set to expire this year. He said renewing those Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest 1% is his top priority. He didn't admit that they're for the wealthiest 1%, but he said extending the Trump tax cuts is his top priority. Bessent testified that he supports Trump's plan to increase tariffs, especially on China. He called the threat of tariffs a useful negotiating tool, adding tariffs can be used punitively to cut the flow of fentanyl into this country. He said he believes tariffs could raise revenue for the federal government, but unlike Trump and unlike Trump voters, he admitted tariffs are paid for by American consumers. He called China the most unbalanced economy in the history of the world and warned they are using their $1 trillion trade surplus to fund their military. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you very much for listening. We had a lot to go over. There's a lot happening, and thank you for staying with me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Please share this episode. It's going to be harder to find me because of what's going on in the tech world right now. Pay attention to who shows up for Trump's inauguration. So hit the notification bell, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my newsletter. I may have to find you in other places. This is an audio podcast. You can download me wherever you get your audio podcasts. And please share this episode. Get the word out. It's going to be harder to find me for a while. So no show tomorrow, probably no show. I'm probably going to do a show early Tuesday morning to go over what looks like are going to be 100 executive orders from this monstrosity who's returning to the Oval Office. Plus, I don't know what the emergency declarations are going to be. He's probably going to use his emergency powers. It's going to be scarier than it actually is. Stay alert, please. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. Let me know what you're thinking and correct me when I'm wrong. Thank you.